about exactly when the last cataclysm would have happened.
There's a number of there's a number of archaeological references, depending on which
Okay,
area you wish to get into. The
sure.
Egyptians, for instance, have a whole series of hieroglyphs that are on the coast of Africa, not in Egypt proper. These were translated by some people in the 20s and the 30s, and they're a step-by-step, blow-by-blow recreation of what it took for the people that were the Atlanteans
Right.
to get out of Atlantis and end up on the coast of Africa to survive.
Wow.
It included the number of ships that survived, the construction of those ships. We find that in Abydos, in the middle of the desert in Egypt, are stored all of these ships that remarkably resemble to a certain extent the low freeboard ships that you would see from the Vikings. Still, nonetheless, huge navigators of incredible ocean situations. So we
Wow.
find all these pointers in an archaeological sense for the Egyptians and the Atlanteans there.
Right.
If we swap over to the Vedic texts, we find that it's not a myth, it's a quite literal description of these people surviving in small boats. In the basic mythology of the Vedas, it wasn't Noah that built a giant boat and saved all the animals. It went the other way. It was a single man by the name of Manu who saved the woman who knew the names and uses of all of the plants. A very a necessary skill if you're going to rebuild agriculture and the Vedic tradition of Ayurveda, which is medicines from plants. And so in their flood myth, there is huge levels of details about the actual occurrences. You just have to read them as actuals as opposed to a mythological story
Right.
construction. So we have tons of evidence of that. Further, the Mayans chose to divide the 11,000 or the precession of the equinox, 26,000, it's not quite 26,000 year cycle, into 5 segments. And that was rather curious because most of the other areas divided it into more calendrically focused 12 segments, 6 segments, something along those lines. The Mayans, though, had a very unique perspective, and they showed that on the 5th of every cycle there was a climatic occurrence. And we can now go back 5,115 years and see indeed that was the time that Iceman got frozen in the meadow. The fellow they dug up in the glacier in Italy, right?
Right.
You're
Yeah.
familiar with him?
Yeah. Yeah.
He was frozen 5,200 years ago. The grass underneath him was not frozen. It rotted. So he went to sleep one night with that wound and then woke up never encased in ice. At that same time, we had ice masses form and shift in the highlands above the Amazon. So there was a climatic problem, a mini cataclysm on the 5th of the cycle. And that was the end of the fourth world and the beginning or the end of the third world and the beginning of the fourth world. The end of the fourth world is now coming in 2012, and just on the 1/5 cycle, we should expect some climatic conditions. And lo and behold, we've got some rather chaotic climate going on at the moment. Global warming is just hogwash. Humans have absolutely no participatory component of this. You can deal with that just as a logical thing and say,
Definitely.
okay, if humans are causing global warming, then who's driving the SUVs on Mars? Because it's got global warming too, or Venus, or the pole flips in the outer planets. There's all kinds of stuff going on in a rather chaotic fashion in our solar system, and it all relates to a solar system-wide cataclysm that's building. So we have tons of evidence of previous cataclysms. Further,
Right.
we have some level of evidence that may include tens of thousands of pole shifts on a more or less 11,500 year cycle. Further, we have the reconciled problem of why the ages of the precession are not regular. Getting into detail there with the precession of the equinox, you would think that because it's a stellar component, that it would be the cycles would be the same length from precession to precession to precession. That each and every one of these 26,000 year cycles, more or less, would be the same length. And that is not the case, and we've never been able to reconcile that, but now we know that when these cataclysms occur, they alter the orbital path of the planet,
Right.
as well as our rotation speed. So we go, in one case, the Mayan recorded a year of exactly 360.2 days, and daily hours, instead of 24, were actually 23.7 in our way of reckoning. Plus, the Mayan went down to 10,000th of a part in their
Wow.
calculation, levels that we could not get to at this point. Further, if we want to get really weird, We know that there's now evidence that there's evidence plastered all over everything that says that the powers that be are expecting this in 2012. If you just look at the dollar bill and some of
Yeah.
their statements, and you see some of the hidden symbols within our dollar, every day you're looking at Nova Order Seclorum, which does not mean New World Order. It means New Order of the Ages, meaning the processional ages.
Right.
So
Yeah,
they've
it's all
actually
gonna
encoded
get.
that, even our powers that be, even the secret societies and the doofuses that think they own us, are encoding all this information right in front of your face.
That's it.
I could go on and on and on for days about this stuff, but if you really want proof of it all,
Yeah.
you need to read Charles Hapgood, you need to read Graham Hancock, you need to read Maurice Cottrell and Patrick Garrell.
Definitely, yeah. I've been listening to some interviews by Garrell lately. He's got a lot of great information. Yeah, that's incredible stuff, and it all seems to fit together really well. And I definitely need to investigate it more, and I encourage the listeners to do that as well. I'm wondering, have you seen the movie 2012 that was released just recently?
No, I'm of a guy, I don't go to theaters because of key issues, like chi, key, that kind of stuff. I
Okay.
can't be in crowds.
I
And so
gotcha.
I rarely watch films. I hardly ever pay any attention to TV. Eventually, I'll probably get around to seeing it when it's available on some other format.
Yeah, I downloaded it with the Pirate Bay the other day, and I watched it last night, and it's really incredible. I mean, it's very evident that just what you said about basically pulling up the drawbridge and watching us all die, and then emerging into a brand new, clean world all alone. That's basically what happens. I don't want to spoil it for you, but you know, it does.
That's all right. I think I understand the general plot anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's what's going on. So that was really interesting to me. Um, but July 7th, that is when there's a bit of a turning of the tide. That's, would you
I think
call
of it
that
as solidification, not turning.
okay,
So the tide will turn sometime in early or late winter, before early spring, and then we'll go through 3 or 4 or 5 months. And then, from my viewpoint in the emotional trend line, the revolution is well underway and will not be stopped in a nascent stillbirth fashion if it makes it past July 7th.
right,
If we're still in an active revolutionary mode from then, we've essentially won. It's just a matter of going through the motions of fighting all the rest of the battles. But we will have won at that stage because the populace will have shifted enough.
right. And so at that point, do you envision this information coming out that we can all prepare for what's coming instead of being kept in the dark
Do
about
I
this?
think there will be disclosure? I don't know. That's a
Yeah,
real question. There may not be effective global communications once the
right.
revolution gets really moving.